I'm Erik Slader.
I'm Chris Carroll.
And this is Epic Fails of History.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The terrible, this is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. It's all the humanity. We've had a problem here.
Welcome. You've got mail.
Today's episode is once again brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/epicfails. That's epic with a K. Over 180,000 titles to choose from. It was the turn of the millennium, a time of unprecedented technological progress and hope for the future. It was also a date foretold to wreak havoc on the world. A world still coming to grips with the advent of the World Wide Web. A world just starting to emerge from the dark ages of dial-up internet. To us, the survivors of the non-apocalypse, it will forever be a day that shall live in mockery.
Within recent years, disasters of all types and description have devastated just about every section of the country. Earthquakes in California, hurricanes in Florida, unprecedented flooding in the Midwest, tornadoes ripped through the Southwest, and bone-chilling blizzards shut down the northern border states. These and other almost annual disasters remind us of the need for personal preparedness. These are facts of life. But could there be a new menace on the horizon? A man-made calamity so pervasive it threatens not only the United States, but the entire world?
The year 2000 computer problem is, without question, the most complex, most expensive problem mankind has ever faced.
There are some Y2k analysts out there that are saying we need to be preparing for the doomsday scenario, and they may be right.
My biggest concern is the potential there is for panic, because people that are panicked will generally make the wrong decisions.
Can your family survive if you're on your own?
Food, water, and shelter. If you cover those, everything else is secondary, but those are the primary ones you've got to address.
Is it possible that even the agencies that normally provide disaster relief could themselves be paralyzed?
I believe Y2K could throw the American medical system into gridlock. Therefore, I think you need to have some backup systems.
Could the Y2K computer bug be the cataclysmic event that forces all of us to discover just how prepared we really are?
The truth is, no one really knows how bad it's going to be. And it's really not about trying to predict the future with accuracy. It's about risk management.
Will you be ready? Or will you be sorry you didn't act in time?
I'm Erik Slader, and today I'm joined once again by my co-host, Chris Carroll.
Hey there.
And today we're hanging out with Jimmy Lester.
Hello.
You may know him from Space Sharks. He was astronaut number 2.
Are you detecting anything?
Yes, I am detecting some movement.
Commander, come in.
Just when you thought it was safe to leave the atmosphere, our worlds will never be the same again. In space, no one can hear you scream.
I've actually been trying to bribe Jimmy to be on the podcast for over a year now, so I'm glad we made this work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, totally. We're actually hanging out in Jimmy's garage. I almost said basement, but we don't really have basements here in Florida. So for those that weren't born yet, Y2K was basically this big scare that was based on a coding bug that would allegedly cause computer systems of the time to revert back to their factory settings.
So basically what the fear was is that they said that the coding was based on a 2-digit year. So instead of putting 1978, it would be 78. So the fear was that when it hit 12/31/99 and it cycled over, it would go back to 00. And that was supposed to do something. Very few people in general understood exactly what it meant. But the fear was that planes were going to fall out of the sky, and trains were going to stop working, the power grid was going to go down, zombies, whatever. It was everything was going to happen. It was just, you couldn't get away from it. It was the most pervasive thing in culture for a good at least half the year.
I remember a lot of people wanted to sell me gold and like prank radios.
Right.
And, and I was very scared that I'd have to live on the plains and,
Yeah.
everything was going to go away. Yeah.
No, totally. Yeah. I mean, this just in the media alone, like it caused like all sorts of panic.
Think about it too, like culturally, we were like obsessed with it being the year 2000. Like,
yeah.
It's easy to forget now. But 1999 was great. Everyone's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's the last year of the 20th century. Woo!
Yeah.
But as soon as it hit 2000, everything was like, this 2000.
Well, yeah, there was all those old sci-fi movies that was like, in the far future of the year 2000, you know.
Everything just seemed to be really focused on the fact that it was all of a sudden the year 2000, you know? Like, it was like, we didn't think we'd get this far.
What's funny about that, though, is like our years are completely arbitrary, you know, like based on our calendar. But like
based on our planet,
exactly. Like it's
why are we special?
Exactly.
Well, even then, like China's calendar, like it's a completely different year.
Like they had the year 2000, like hundreds of years ago, right?
Yeah. They're like 2000.
Well, the funny thing is that 2000 wasn't even good enough because then people were like, "Oh wait, no, it's 2001 because we got it wrong."
Yeah,
and it was 2012 because made a movie about it.
Well, yeah, and that's
calendar.
Wasn't there a 2008 one in there somewhere too?
I'm sure.
Speaking of the Mayan calendar, that was another one of those scares. It's like where if you thought about it logically, there was really nothing to be worried about.
Just like Y2k.
The whole thing with the Mayan calendar was that it ran out on, what was it, December 21st, 2012.
Yeah.
But like, that's just because they ran out of space.
Also,
like there was another calendar that would be made by then
they kind of died
to keep
a long
going.
time ago.
Yeah.
I think they're like, let's just work way ahead.
Right. Yeah. They're just lazy. The funny thing is that because the concern over Y2K became such a big deal, there was actually emergency sessions between 120 nations that was convened in an attempt to plan for the worst. It was the National Y2K Coordinators meeting of 1998. FEMA even issued a disaster-ready consumer guide for the public to prepare. And I think a lot of this was because they knew that people might freak out.
Do you guys remember the Daily Show ripping on Y2K stuff like constantly?
Oh, yeah.
Main reasons I never took it seriously because I was like, dude, if Jon Stewart isn't scared, I'm not scared. I'm not worried about it. If he's making fun of this, like, guys, it's going to be fine. You know, this is not something that escaped people's attention.
Let's have fun with the conspiracy side of it, too, that maybe it was just a big, giant cash grab.
Without a
all
doubt.
These agencies are partying, like all these meetings. There's no Y2K talk. They're like,
think about all the crazy crap we're getting away with while they're all looking over here.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
And at the same time, like,
Y2K meetings. We're trying to figure out what's going to happen because all the computers will shut down and planes will fall from the sky and you'll all die. So.
Yeah, it's like the guy
Vote for
who
me.
was like, some senator's probably tied to like an American flag manufacturing company or whatever. Yeah. He was the guy.
Oh yeah,
or like
no, they all just pile in. Like
they can.
It's like a dog piling. Hey guys, let's get over with the Y2K.
Exactly.
The canned food lobbyists and all that.
Everybody's running at it.
Bottled water.
As goofy as it all
big
seemed,
water.
When you got to like mid-December, and there started to be some people who were legit panicky about
like
it.
Prepping and like actually
you would
prepping.
Go to the grocery store for like stuff for just yourself for lunch or whatever, like for food for the week, and it's like there's no cans.
Yep.
No cans. In like
Yeah.
a Publix or a Winn-Dixie or whatever. A major grocery store chain, and it's like almost all the canned goods are completely gone.
Yeah,
it was worse than what you'd see during like a hurricane.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but really,
and it was nationwide.
Like really fat dude.
That's very possible. Well, it's the same thing. Like anytime you see a hurricane supposedly coming for Jacksonville, right? And we're pretty conveniently located to protect ourselves from hurricanes. There's things that are coming that I can, you can tell like that's not going to hit us hard. It'll be like we're going to get some rainstorms. That's about it. And people like flip out.
Yeah.
They're evacuating, and it's like
it's fun. It's fun to flip out.
You feel like you're in a survival
horror game.
Or
maybe it's not fun, but it's something. It's stimulating.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's it's not something you experience every day.
Away on a quick trip to a hotel up in Georgia somewhere, And...
Well, here's my thing, right?
It's almost like the Walking Dead fantasy,
Traffic here at the best of times is a living nightmare. Like anytime they're like, "All right, everybody, start evacuating in zones. We're gonna get this done orderly," and it's like. The streets are just utter parking lots.
Yeah.
There's no gas. So it's like people are running out of gas all over the place. And you just sit in traffic for like 17 hours. Meanwhile, the storm is just starting to come in on top of you. Or if you just stayed at home, you would have been fine. It's the same mentality. I mean, like, I think to that extent, like, to kind of tie it back to the Y2K thing a little bit, it's like, I think some people do tend to get into panic very quickly. And like Jimmy said, I think it's because maybe it's like just because it's different. it's like a new stimuli that you don't get normally. You don't normally have that feeling. It's not something you experience all the time. Meanwhile, there's some people who are in like they grow up in like places where there's bombings all the time or whatever. You could literally be like, hey man, there's a hurricane like 3 blocks over, and they'd be like, I'm fine.
It's all a matter of perspective. Yeah.
There was I will say this, the Y2K thing did lead to a lot, like hurricanes do.
Yeah.
A lot of really great parties.
Hey, speaking of that, we actually had a pretty crazy one.
Yeah, we did.
What was it, Irma? Which one was that?
No, it was, not Michael.
It was 2015, 2016?
16, I think.
15.
What was the one we got right before Hurricane Irma?
There were so many back to back.
I want to say.
It wasn't Michael?
It might have been Michael.
Matthew.
Yeah, back in the beaches, right? So my brother and his girlfriend and my brother's 2 Siberian Huskies and my brother's cat.
Oh my
God.
God.
Looking for a place to move out to because his house got flooded. It was not a good place to be. So Erik was living on Fort Carolina at the time. Stay out there. Now my wife and I were on the west side and we were perfectly safe in a 2nd floor apartment. Like an old ass concrete building. Like we were safe as hell.
Yeah.
But she was a little panicked and really more than anything didn't want to be hanging out just with the 2 of us with no power if the power went out because that place got really hot. So Erik was kind enough to be like, hey, we got a little bit of extra room. Come crash with us. So my wife and I and our 3 cats come to his house where he already had 2 dogs and 2 cats.
Yep.
But pets aside, we did it right. I bought a bottle of Patron and
we had so much alcohol, like for 48 hours straight. It was bad.
The rain was coming like sideways at one point, like late at night. It was like 3 in the morning. I don't even remember if anybody else was awake. I think my brother might have been. Like we were on the back porch, just like, nah. It was fun though. I mean, the party was fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty good time for the most part. Well, once the power went out, it really started to suck.
We were like, dude, we're so sorry about your house.
What was crazy is we had just moved in and the insurance on the house hadn't even kicked in yet. So we were like freaking out. Good times. But yeah, no joke. Like gas stations were running dry because people were just hoarding it all. Like, just
it wasn't
expecting the worst.
It was never scary necessarily, but at times it was off-putting for sure.
Yeah.
And there's this mechanism. The hoarding gets fed by the people that are antagonizing it too.
Right.
In all seriousness, like there is that mechanism where they're like, oh yeah, be scared. Bye.
Do you remember El Nino?
All other tropical storms must bow before El Nino. But those of you who don't habla español, El Nino is Spanish for the Nino.
Of course. Like, people were freaking out about that. They were, like, way more...
How many flus? Swine flu?
Yeah, like...
Flu, all,
and all that stuff ended up being nothing.
Sick. I'm not kidding about that. But,
totally.
just, like, the frenzy about it.
And the
24-hour news cycle, man. That's what started it.
Resources for, like, disasters and things like that.
Yeah.
As soon as people start doing it, everybody starts doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because all it takes is like a couple people to walk into a Publix or whatever where a storm may or may not be coming and walk out with like 12 carts full of water.
Yeah.
Or something. And all of a sudden everyone in the parking lot like, hey, you guys might want to get down here.
Some shit going down. I don't know what it is, but you better do it.
And it's like dominoes. Word spreads and all of a sudden it's like everyone's on a panic.
When all was said and done, about $600 billion was spent globally to avert catastrophic disaster, which of course turned out to be the biggest non-event in history.
Right.
Biggest cash grab.
All the programmers are just counting their...
Yeah, the programmers.
The programmer's like, oh yeah, I'm a consultant.
If you thought about it for even a minute, people that put these systems in place were not stupid enough to not have some kind of fail-safes in place for the majority of these things. Or later on, they were able to build fail-safes to avoid this being an issue.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe they just didn't expect the software to last that long and they were going to reprogram it
Exactly.
anyway.
Well, that planned obsolete.
The point being, there were safety nets in place for all this stuff. So
they thought about this years ago.
Unfounded.
Years
and it was
prior.
really like almost to the point where I'm not going to say half because it wasn't half, but a small percentage of people started acting like the crazy psycho on the street corner, like the end is coming for like 40 years. And it's like, dude, you've been here every day for 40 years. Your end might be coming. But...
So in all fairness, those people were probably doing other Y2Ks before Y2K came along.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like every other year we hear like there's this new biblical prophecy, you know.
They covered a lot of
in
stuff.
time. Nostradamus and all that.
It was like Jimmy said, it was like almost marketed.
It was an event.
Yeah. It was like, everybody ready? I want to say even the president said some
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was. Hey, I'm on the way out, so good luck, everybody.
But, I mean, in all fairness, who was president?
It was
Clinton still, right?
Yeah, because Bush's inauguration wasn't until January.
Yeah, Billy Bob wasn't surfing the net too much. So I don't think he really knew too much about Y2K.
Clinton would have just been like, all right, everybody, I'm out. Good luck.
the war against the machines.
My question to you two then is, where were you when Y2K didn't happen?
Where was I?
I know where I was. I was on my friend Jamie's roof drinking.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
So that was New Year's Eve, 1999.
Yep.
I was getting ready to go to the University of Florida. Okay, yeah, so it was a big New Year's Eve party, actually. It was like a lot of my friends were there, but it was like a big house on a pond. And a bunch of people were trying to go swimming, even though it was like cold as crap. And everyone was kind of ignoring the fact that it was Y2K and just more partying the fact that it was New Year's.
Yeah.
And somebody made a joke about it at like 12:55 or 11:55. And you could tell it made a lot of people like start to get uneasy. Like, man, what if? But no, I was in a New Year's Eve party, and it was just a normal New Year's Eve party. It was fun, but it wasn't like a hoarder's party. Nobody was, make sure to turn off your breakers right before midnight just to make sure nothing, it wasn't like nobody had stockpiles of anything other than alcohol.
Yeah, I mean, we were, the only thing I remember is that we were sitting inside partying. There was a couple people at the house, and me and my buddy Pete were just thinking, like, what if some crazy shit goes down? Let's go sit on the roof and let it pass, And so we sat out there and we heard everybody.
The apocalypse.
Yeah,
exactly.
We could hear everybody on the inside cheer, and we took some shots, went inside. Nothing happened.
Sounds about right.
Exactly. Back to work.
Yeah. I was a kid at the time. I was living in the suburbs of Vegas. My parents were out partying. I was hanging out with my stepbrother. I remember we were playing like Nintendo 64, like Mario Kart or something. And I distinctly remember watching The Matrix. I think we had rented it on VHS from Blockbuster, and we just, kind of staying up and watching the countdown. Yeah.
Just, again, not necessarily boring, but like a normal New Year's Eve night, wasn't like, oh my God, the world's gonna end. Like, I kind of wish that I'd known people that really thought like that. I knew a couple people that were worried about it, but nobody that was freaking out to the degree that you would see like portrayed on the news or whatever.
So we actually got a little freaked out. It might have been that we were like 12, like one of our neighbors literally was a prepper. Like we saw him carting in, like, I don't know if it was just like the area we lived in, but there was a lot of people that were like what's going to happen? I think more people were more worried about the mass looting and stuff like that. Like if the power went out, that kind of thing.
Do you think maybe that has something to do with the mentality, like that desert mentality?
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that like all those like militias end up,
Yeah. And also like, that's an area that's got a history of like government sting and shenanigans.
Oh yeah.
All kinds of weird crap. And I don't mean like supernatural or whatever, but like just, it seems like, especially with like Nevada and Las Vegas in particular, if something horrible is going to happen, it's probably going to happen here first.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's sort
like
of the
portal from hell. That's why everybody goes there to party.
But yeah, I remember like where the house was, we could actually look out and see like the strip in the distance. Cause Vegas is a valley, so the suburbs are kind of higher up, you know, and you could kind of see like the lights and the fireworks and stuff. So yeah, it was something else. It was a little surreal, and I think that was kind of stuck with me, Like I remember like 5 minutes beforehand, we were both like just kind of quiet looking at each other like,
I do remember keeping a very close eye on, usually like when you're watching the like New Year's Eve countdowns or whatever.
Yeah.
When it's the actual like last few seconds, it's just a shot of the ball. Mm-hmm. But every now and then they'll have like a split screen or like an inset or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember that year they had been Ryan Seacrest even already at that point. I don't even remember, but it might have still been.
Yeah, Dick Clark. So he was doing it for years.
Oh, yeah.
It was Dick Clark.
He's like, is he okay?
I do remember him being, when it was like 3, 2, seeing him go like, and like flinching a little bit, like when they're about to hit 0, like, oh, what's gonna happen? He was kind of like, and then it was, everybody's just celebrating, and the lights are still on, and nothing happened at all.
Yeah,
and it was like,
It's kind of funny. It was a much simpler time looking back on it. Cause like this was before 9/11. This was before, like it was a way different world. Americans just had a totally different mindset.
It really was. I mean,
like
9/11 changed things from one day to the next. Like a seismic shift.
Yeah.
For the nation as a whole, really for the whole world, totally different topic altogether. Back then, I was like, this is the worst thing we have to worry about.
Yeah, exactly.
If our computers are going to work the next day.
Although I gotta say, if something like Y2K was to happen today, like actually happen where all the computers just shut down, I think it would be a much worse situation now than it was 20 years ago, because our technology, like everything, society is so dependent now on like the internet, on social media, all that stuff. So really, like, that would be catastrophic today. It may not have been then because...
Just picture if you had one day where nobody's debit cards work.
Yeah, exactly. That alone.
Just one day.
Just imagine.
The economy would, like, buckle. Be like, buy my nacho cheese stuffed Doritos.
I'm not saying we couldn't bounce back from it, but because the way things have kind of evolved, you know, it would be kind of a setback.
I mean, at this point, though, too, they have, like, mesh nets and things that would override all that right away. Like,
Fair
that's
enough,
like the emergency kind of deployment. You know, like, that's how we're thinking now.
Because shit like that.
Like, it would suck terribly for us and be horribly inconvenient. But I think right away, like, female would kick in with something.
Well, would they? They don't have the best track record.
When it comes to, like, the American economy, I have a feeling that I have to believe.
Yeah, I know we have to. Like,
if I can think, and if anybody's listening, you know, I'll be glad to share some ideas.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, maybe that would be a good idea.
You know, I would hope someone has thought of it, but, like, I don't know. Maybe it's just the last few years, but
the reason that I think this is different is because it involves money.
That's a good point. Sad, but probably true. I was just thinking, like, response time with Katrina and things like that. But I guess this would be a different animal. Yeah. I've actually been thinking about this a lot lately, just how technology's evolved so fast that society really has had trouble kind of keeping up. Like, our laws and all that haven't really adapted to the way society's evolved, just based around our use of technology and all that.
Part of that is because the people that make the laws are typically not in touch.
Yeah. Just look at that hearing with Zuckerberg.
I'll make the argument that it's the only way to do it in democracy, though. Because you don't want to have laws that already block off what's happening.
Right. You're right.
You want the law. You want the laws to catch up. Because that allows things. I mean, some eggs will get broken. I feel like that's the healthiest way for stuff to evolve.
Just kind of slowly.
Then you get good laws. Otherwise... You start doing stuff like in some of the Asian nations.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, you don't want to
kind of idea.
Yeah, regulation to an extent, but like you really got to be careful with that because at what point are you infringing on people's freedoms and
I want like sensible regulation stuff that like actually captures like with AI specifically.
Now that's a topic.
That's the one thing of all the evolving technology, and it's because I'm such a science fiction nerd growing up. But like the AI scares the shit out of me. I'll be honest.
Same, bro.
I'm like, man. How far are you from like a robot that can make itself like make breakfast for me, like that looks like a human, and Terminators?
Yeah.
Like, have you seen these machines? I saw this thing on YouTube where these guys, these engineers somewhere had built. It's American, I think, but they had built a robot that was intended for like combat.
Yeah.
And it's bipedal. And they show like its first test like 3-4 years ago or something like that. And it's trying to run across like an obstacle course. And this thing books it pretty fast.
Yeah.
But it trips a couple times and it's kind of a little clinky and a little awkward.
Sure.
And
but it adapts.
What it is now.
Yeah.
And they built like this giant obstacle course made out of like crates. It's like a human, even like a dude who's like peak parkour and was like on a full head of steam would take a minute to get these boxes. And this thing's like, it just hops up on like Cubert. And it's just
That's nuts.
Yeah. And it's like immediately like, well, we're obsolete. That killed 50 people before someone could take that thing down.
Yeah.
And, you know, it reminds me of that movie, the Robopocalypse.
That book is
terrifying.
Incredible. Yeah.
That one did scare me. That's scary. And did you read the sequel?
Yeah, the sequel was really weird.
It was weird, but it was really good too.
Yeah. The first one to me was more like, because I'm such a big fan of like zombie apocalypse movies and stuff, culture. Like really kind of the next step.
Hear ye, hear ye. Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day free trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. I figured this might be a good time to recommend one of my favorite sci-fi audiobooks in recent memory, Robopocalypse, written by Daniel H. Wilson and narrated by Mike Chamberlain. It's basically the story of a global AI revolution in the not-too-distant future, told in the style of Max Brooks's World War Z, except with robots instead of zombies. It's not just a thrilling sci-fi novel, it's also an excellent thought-provoking piece on the potential dangers of artificial intelligence gone awry. Plus, it'll most likely be essential reading in the New World Order after the inevitable robot uprising. Anywho, to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/epicfails with a K. Again, that's audibletrial.com/EPIK for your free audiobook. Oh, and while you're at it, all 4 Epic Fails history books are available now on Audible. Huzzah!
No, but the AI always scares me because it's like, if it's based off the way humans think, or at least, origination based off the way humans think.
Yeah.
Humans hate humans.
They do.
Just instinctively,
Yeah.
So you're going to build a machine that looks at the world the way humans look at the world? I mean, how could it not be Ultron?
I don't know. I've tossed around this idea too. I have a feeling it just depends on how it accesses information.
Yeah.
Like when it's exposed to it.
Yeah.
Because, and it's going to be a long time. So before we get to like the general, AI.
Like legitimate artificial intelligence.
Anytime you see like one of these movies, and I know life is not a movie, but just bear with me for a second.
Yeah, you're good.
Anytime you see one of these movies, and we'll use the Terminator because it's by far the most famous example, where they show like, the time travel stuff, or like you'll be watching a video in the movie about like, and this is how Skynet built this. And you see like the precursors to the Terminators. Every one of those things exists for real now. Then some.
Yep.
And drones and all that stuff. That
are,
have AIs on board, boats on them. Just like program a destination, like go kill something there. And just zips off and blows stuff up. And it's freaking terrifying to me.
Who signed off on this? Like, that's the thing. It happened so fast. Like, we didn't really consent to this. We didn't really think about it.
Oh, cool.
It's
drones.
like,
I can film stuff like for nature or whatever. Make cool videos for my skating gear. And then all of a sudden it's like the government's like, we'll put bombs on them.
And honestly, we should have seen that coming, because like with every technology that comes along, we're strapping guns to it. We're strapping bombs. I mean, look at the airplane. It was invented in what, 1903?
You wrote the book on it.
Yeah, no. I should know this. But so, just 10 years later,
there's a fighter plane.
Yeah, they're using them in war. World War I, and that completely changed the game.
And really human, and to see something like, whoa, that's cool. And then the second,
how many people can we kill with this?
Someone with that.
Exactly.
Totally. One of the scarier things too is that like some of the more authoritarian regimes that are technologically advanced are trying to like change the way that you look at human rights, instead of like looking at it from a perspective of freedom and democracy. They're looking at it from a perspective of how can we deal with like the technology that people have and restrict them from doing things we don't like.
It's
like,
true.
That's the focus. And so that's the scary part for me, is that the technology
especially
is
these
like,
autocracies and everything.
It's the technology is giving them an excuse to become Orwellian states.
Yeah. Well, look at what's happening in China right now.
That's
like
specifically them. They're actually advocating they're not even trying to advocate that they don't violate human rights. They're trying to say that we've all got it wrong and that we shouldn't scrutinize them so badly because how hard it is to be. Like basically, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that's their, the argument is like, you don't know what it's like to be me. It's hard. I have to kill Uyghurs and do all stuff to make everything work. But anyways, getting off topic.
No, totally. It's a good point.
The technology, they're using that as an excuse now to try and undermine some of the things that are the most important about the technology, which it allows people to connect in unrestricted ways. Like access information.
That was the idea behind the whole thing, is to bring the entire world together. So people can see like borders are meaningless. Like
exactly.
But to take it back to one of the things I want to say with Y2K is that I think that that's one of those moments too where it marks this for our generations, the few that are going to pass through this time. This one of those weird conspiracy spirals where things just got strange at that time, because there was so much of that chatter going on about not just the Y2K bug, but then the date itself and all these ideas about the world ending or the world shifting or there being some kind of like, spiritual shift. I mean, there's just things going on, all these expectations. And with anything with humanity, it's perception. It's not actually what happened. It's what we think is going to happen or what we think happened or what we think we saw. And so that's one of those. And then you mentioned like 9/11. That's a big one. And just the year 2001, I remember they saying earlier, all along those ways leading up to where we're at now in this weirdness, it's been those kind of strange moments where we're all freaking out. Like, what's going to happen? What's going on?
Yeah.
And it's been like
it's like our
years.
thing,
It's been like 20 years of this crap. And I guess every generation has it. Every couple generations have it, because you look at like the 60s and 70s were dangerous time to be alive. See, here's that. We tend, I think our generation tends to look back at like the 90s as idyllic.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us it was, but that doesn't mean it was for everybody else.
Yeah.
And the 80s, same thing. But in a lot of parts of America, the 80s were horrible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, it's kind of always been shitty. It's just, I think, for now, because of the globalization and instant access to everything, everyone's seeing the way it really is. It really probably always has been.
That's a good point.
And it's like, oh man, I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
We gotta make some changes here, but it's like, it all seems to be happening right after the other. And like atrocity.
It gets exhausting after a while.
It gets desensitizing.
Yeah.
I think
they utilize that.
Like harken back to like, oh, I wish it was this time. It was so much nicer back then. Because I do too, like for the 80s and the 90s and things like that, because we were all younger then. Nicer, but
bliss.
Like,
true.
It was a lot harder to be so sophisticated and be scared about every move.
No, totally. It's pretty crazy to think about. I want to bring it back real quick, though, to the 2016 election. We know Russia hacked the U.S.
Right.
I think that's just another example of how technology is being used as a weapon.
Right. The Cold War is now it's like a data war.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Well, yeah,
and so how do we stop that? Like,
people have to care, man. People care, and money starts going into the right places to stop this crap. It'll stop.
Yeah.
But when the people who do it get away with it every time, why would they ever stop doing it?
I don't know. I always think the idea of stopping something is never going to work. You redirect it. You can try to go alongside it and help steer it, but I think that it is what it is. This is already running its course. You know, we're already on the path, and basically we blow ourselves up or we wake the AI up.
I mean, we all knew this wasn't going to end well.
Yeah. That doesn't have to be.
I don't think any of us really thought we'd be here for the end of it.
That reminds me of the Fermi Paradox. Have you heard about this? One of the reasons, there's a lot of reasons why we haven't ran into aliens, but one of them is that societies, at least mathematically or statistically, might not get past the whole not destroying themselves with nuclear weapons phase.
The beast that it is, it's like insanely inefficient.
Maybe we deserve to be taken over by our robot overlords.
I don't know.
But I do think AI is the most practical governor for our...
Well, because it's not biased, right?
We can still choose the rules, just allow it to apply to it.
You have to be really careful with that, though.
I'm all for it. I feel like there should not be a president. We should have an AI that runs. And then we can have occasional check-ins.
The book, 1984, the George Orwell book, it kind of predicted a lot of what's happening now in a weird way. The whole surveillance, the government surveillance thing, Big Brother's constantly watching. That happened, and no one seemed to care. What are your thoughts on that? Like, we kind of just gave up our freedom for security.
Because nothing became dystopian. Nothing changed.
I mean,
it's the brilliance of it.
It's comfortable. It's comfortable.
That's why that book works, because it's worse than this.
Yeah.
That's why. That's the only reason you can read it, is because it's like, oh, that would really suck. And then you're like, oh, this is kind of like that. Damn, I better care.
Exactly.
The book's probably supposed to provoke something, but I mean,
but here's the thing, though. And this is the brilliant when they do stuff like this: is that if you do incrementally and you just make it seem like it's not a big deal, nothing changes for people on a day-to-day basis, at least not significantly enough where it's jarring. Very few people are going to give a crap.
Well, I didn't mean to get super off topic, but
yes, you did.
I wanted to mention.
Note say get super off topic.
I just wanted to bring up AI again. One of the things that a lot of economists and entrepreneurs have been saying for years, basically automation is becoming way more prevalent. It's not necessarily a bad thing. The problem is if we don't acknowledge it, if we don't embrace it, it could cause a lot of serious problems because jobs are going to go away. It's already happening.
Technology grows, the less use there is for human labor. And the less use there is for human labor, the more people you have that don't have a way to feed themselves.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a big problem. And it's only going to get worse, I think this is going to be one of the major issues over the next 10, 20 years. And we really have to have a plan. And I don't think anyone has a plan for what's going to happen.
No 9000 computer has ever made a mistake or distorted information. It's going to go 100% failure within 72 hours, and it will stay that way until it fails. It can only be attributable to human error.
For this episode, we reached out to the internet and asked everyone for their Y2k survival stories. On Twitter, @AmongstTheBooks podcast says, convincing my landlady that 40 gallons of water are not necessary. From Facebook, Carly Laurie says, watching MTV on my couch. Miranda Personette says, drinking alcohol for the first time. Rich Tiberius Logue says, I was at work at Circle K. The manager was there as well to fix anything that the bug messed up. Nothing happened, and she left at about 12:15. Then I was by myself, bored for the next 5 hours. Mary Lybrook says, I was at a block party with neighbors. It was a foggy Florida night. We were all sitting around the bonfire in our lawn chairs. I clearly remember us taking in a deep breath. At the end of the countdown, when the lights stayed on, we all breathed out. Nicole Wilkes says, I don't remember. That was 20 years ago. So I asked Reddit, where were you when Y2K didn't happen? We got some pretty good feedback. Pariah 18YT says, in my dad's balls.
Whoa, wait a minute. Was it like the next day that he was born?
Sadie Riser, SADIRYZER, Sadie Riser? What do you guys think? That's what it sounds like. Sadie Riser says, in bed, prob. I had just turned 6. Tutsumaki Ronik? Sorry, I'm butchering. I know it. In the basement, preparing for Y2K like a responsible 10-year-old, while the rest of my family had a carefree New Year's party upstairs.
His parents locked him in the basement.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Poor guy. He was only 10.
Get down there and prep for Y2K.
It's the worst Y2K of my life.
The worst Y2K.
This guy, SSG304 says, sitting at home, my arm was broken in a car accident 3 or 4 days prior to New Year's Eve. That sucks.
That sucked. That did suck.
Yeah.
It's still broken, man. Healthcare's worse than I thought.
Matt Kipnis on Facebook says, I was working at Radio Shack selling old people computers because I made commission on selling Y2K computers. I once got an old lady to buy a computer just so she could play solitaire, all the while blocking the view of the handheld solitaire games. That's a good answer.
Oh, bro.
That's cold.
Go to the hell portal in Vegas.
That's not so
You're a dick, dude.
You could have prefaced that with like, listen, guys.
Maybe Erik made it sound like braggy, but
it
sounded like he was bragging.
Friend of the show, Devin Clark, actually responded. He said, what exactly was a Y2K computer? Matt responds, no idea, but it was marked as Y2K compliant. I can only imagine the specs on that thing.
The same as the other one that's not Y2K compliant.
It's the exact same thing.
Okay, Adrian Pullen. Sleeping in my bedroom. My stepfather shut off the main breaker in the house and everyone started screaming.
We got one.
Nice. That's the best.
That's great. That's really funny. Man.
Too bad Akiva won't go through a Y2K.
So Megan Kaminsky says, I went to a rave in Cleveland. One of my best friends really wanted to go with us, but her husband wouldn't let her out because he was freaking out about Y2K. So, like, yeah, I mean, a lot of people really did have some serious, like, you know, existential crises, I guess, over this thing. I got one last one here on Twitter just now. This guy, Nelgum Ford, at Nelgum Ford, he says, in the lounge of my house that I still live in, hosting a millennium party. It went quite well in that we had to recarpet the lounger afterwards. That sounds like an epic party. I think I was just born too late.
And a blue Corvette, and everything is blue for him and himself and everybody around, cause he ain't got nobody to listen.
Have anything you want to plug before we head out?
Sure. So I work with a nonprofit here in Jacksonville, Florida, Party Benefit and Jam, PB&J for short. And check us out on Facebook. You can find us on there.
Nice.
We help other, so we're a smaller nonprofit, but we help other nonprofits basically put on events and help them not only fundraise, but connect and get a broader audience and come up with ideas for events.
I've been to a couple of these events. They're always a lot of fun, and you definitely get something out of them.
Thanks, man.
So yeah, you always do a great job with those. When's the next one? Do you know?
So we'll be so we have our kind of flagship event right now, which is our jam sessions. It's put on by Denise Reagan, and we'll have. Last year we did them quarterly, so we're probably going to do the same model this year, and we'll be announcing it on the Facebook page. So
awesome! Yeah, definitely go check it out, guys. It is worth mentioning that Chris and I are getting back to doing more Comic Zombie episodes soon. Yes. We finally got the site back up and running. I don't know if anyone just started listening to this podcast and we keep promoting this ComicZombie.net. We keep promoting this other podcast that hasn't gone anywhere in a year.
Yeah, we haven't done an episode forever.
No, but we've both been like crazy busy at work and we got a lot going on, and we don't do this as a full-time job, unfortunately. Yeah. We would in a heartbeat, but definitely if you get a chance, go check out the other podcasts at comiczombie.net or comiczombie.podbean.com. And as always, you can check out more epic fails of history at epicfails.com, epic with a K, or the podcast page, epicfails.podbean.com. That's epic with a K, once again. You can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff at Erik Slader. That's Erik with a K, Slader with a D as in dog. All right. Well, thanks for listening. Till next time.
Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world? This can't be. Be what? Be real?
On December 31st, the world will celebrate an event that begins in one century and ends in the next. Millennium Live, only on PAX TV.
It's been 20 years since that fateful day. Hopefully, we can all take comfort in the fact that people have been wrong about the end of the world since the beginning of recorded history. In the meantime, may 2020 be an epic win for you all. Happy New Year.
File's done. Goodbye.